To the CDBG-CV Round 2 application tutorial. This is part 2, where we will be walking through the application itself. In part 1, we showed you how to create a member login, where to find the application, and how to submit a technical assistance request. So, like I said a moment ago, in this portion of the tutorial, or part 2 of the tutorial, we will be walking through the application itself. We'll be showing you what documents you're going to need, and where to upload them, and what information we are looking for throughout the process. Since we showed you where to find the application in the previous portion of the tutorial, let's just jump right in. This is page 1. This is what starts out on the page when you get to the application portion. It is asking for all of the eligibility requirements that are needed to be eligible for funding for the CDBG-CV program. One of the most important fields in this section is the email field. As I said in part 1, you have to use the email that you associated your account with, and this will allow you to save it and access it at a later date. So make sure you put in the same email address. And then, since I'm sure most of you have reviewed the eligibility requirements on the homepage in both the eligibility section and then also most of the materials in the Help Center, including these tutorials, I'm simply going to walk through this portion of the application, and y'all can follow along and take notes, and I will make comments where I find that they are needed. So for the business county, this is simply the county where your business is actually associated with and located in. And then your county of personal residence is, of course, the county that you live in. All of the text in blue you'll see is explanatory text. If it's under a field, it's explaining what the field is asking for and how to acquire the information there. So for persons in household, that includes anyone living at your residence, and anybody living at your residence will also contribute to your household income. So for the next section, is your fiscal year 2020 income less than or equal to the number above? That is your household income for 2020. If you indicate no, and we had a little tool available on the homepage to check to see whether or not you met the income requirements, it will indicate as such. But for the purposes of this application, we will be acting as an eligible party, so we will click yes for all of the following fields on the eligibility section. So let's say our household income for 2020 was $30,000. There we go. And then the demographic information, none of it is required, but we ask that you fill out anything that is applicable to you. This will better help us serve the community later with future programs, and better target people who may be eligible for more programs. Next. So this second page is another overview of all of the documentation and information that you will need for the application. I'm not going to run through everything because we've already covered quite a bit, but just a couple of the important ones. A DUNS number, we have a link to the tutorial in the Help Center here if you click that, if you don't have the DUNS number already. Your completed 2018, 2019, and or 2020 federal taxes as filed. It depends what tax filings you need, depend on what year your business was formed. So if your business was formed in 2020, we don't require your 2020 federal filing to finish the application, but it is required to receive funding if you are found to be eligible after the application is reviewed. State taxes are not required. And this right here is an example of the expense table or the grant funding usage table that we will ask you to fill out later in the application. And it's essentially an explanation of what you'll be using or plan to be using CDBG-CV Round 2 funding for. Moving on. So page 3 is where you'll fill out your business information. Essentially, it's just any information associated with your business. So your full name, your business name, the phone number associated with you and your business, and so on and so forth. So I will fill these fields out with some placeholder information. So this right here is our first required file upload field. We need a proof of residence, essentially, to prove that you are a resident of the state of Vermont. So that can be the front and back of your Vermont state ID or driver's license, or if you do not have either of those, simply 2 forms of mail associating your name with your physical residence. So I'm going to click upload and you'll see the big list of documents that I have ready for this application. Here we go. Residency proof. And we're going to upload that, and that's just a PDF scan of my theoretical Vermont license. And then here is simply the physical and mailing address of business. And if they're the same address, unfortunately, we have to ask you to fill those out twice. In your business type, let's say we are in finance and insurance. And this is the first instance in the application where you can save. If you click yes, I'd like to save and continue later, the form will prevent you from moving to the next page and you'll simply click save. If you do this, you will receive an email indicating that you have saved. And then to re-access your application, simply log back in and go back to the application page. There will be a button saying click here to review your application, and if you click that, it will redirect you to the spot in the application where you indicated that you wanted to save, and you will be able to continue. To do so, simply uncheck the yes, I'd like to save and continue box after you have returned to your application, and you'll be able to move on to the next page. So page 4 is the revenue page. This is where we ask for your business's revenue for any of the years applicable after or during its date of establishment. So for our purposes, let's say we established our business on March 15th, 2019. So if we established our business on March 15th, 2019, then the system's going to ask us for our 2019 revenue and our 2020 revenue. 2020, 2019 revenue tax filings are required if your business was established at that point. 2020 revenue tax filings, however, are not required at this moment, but as I said previously, they will be required to receive funding. So let's say our revenue in 2019 was $30,000 and our revenue in 2020 was $30,000. And I have my 2019 federal tax filing ready to go, so I just upload it there. And I also have my 2020 tax filing ready to go, so I will upload it there. And again, at the bottom of the page, you can click yes, I'd like to save and continue later, and you can check that save if you'd like to acquire some more materials or some more information, or if you don't have the time, and then you can come back and continue later. So page 5 is the duplication of benefits section. Here we're asking for whether or not you received any federal or state loans or funding from any of the programs having to do with COVID-19, because essentially the state and the federal government are not allowing for a duplication of benefits. So if you've received money for certain expenses or certain projects already, then those expenses and projects will not be covered under CDBG-CV round 2. So we simply ask you whether or not you've received funding from like the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, or an EIDL loan or grant. If you have received funding and you indicate yes, then we ask what amount you received. So let's say $5,000. And this is where you will upload support or proof of receival of these funds. And this support or proof can be anything from a PDF of a bank statement or a loan agreement or an email confirming the amount received from a bank or the governing body issuing the loan. And so I have my support for my EIDL loan here. So I will upload that. And if you have not used the funds, simply indicate that you have not used the funds, and then you can continue on. If you have used the funds, however, we ask that you break down what you have used the funds for, or what of the funds you have used and what you have used them for. So if you've only used half of your $5,000 EIDL loan, simply indicate what you used that half for, and then we'll be able to determine that the other half has been unused. So let's say you used it for August through September rent, and that was $2,000. And personal protective equipment for 2020. Or let's say March through December 2020. And that was $3,000. And so if you have received funds from any of the other programs and you have used them, we'll ask you to go through the same process for each program. For the purposes of this tutorial and walkthrough, however, we will simply move through as if we have not. But the process is the same, except for certain programs like unemployment insurance. For unemployment insurance, we simply ask what amount you received, as unemployment insurance and other forms of unemployment payment via the Treasury are not eligible to be used for business expenses or not associated with businesses. So let's say $2,000 there. We also ask if you have received round 1 funding. Let's imagine that we did not. And then simply type your signature below. And so if at any point you want to stop and save in the middle of a page, that's perfectly fine. As soon as you check this box, no matter what you have or have not filled out on this page, you will be able to save it to continue later. So page 6 is the expenses page. This is the page where you will be indicating to us how much funding you are looking to receive and for what you will be using it for, whether that is reimbursing expenses already incurred or using it for pivot projects and other future projects. We ask that you review the eligible expenses and the ineligible expenses before you fill out the tables below, so that we don't have anything that is not eligible indicated as required for funding. Statement of need is simply how COVID-19 affected your business. So let's say you run a bar and the COVID-19 pandemic significantly reduced patronage. If you will be using these funds for a pivot project, simply indicate as such and provide a brief description. Let's say you want to create an outdoor seating area. So you can have people in, outside throughout the summer. And if you will be using any of the funding to reimburse any business expenses, indicate as such there, and then simply fill out what those are in the requested use of grant funds table below. So let's use an example for a business expense reimbursement. Let's say you have a Shopify premium account and you want to use CDBG-CV round 2 funding, pay your Shopify premium bills from March through December, and the cost of that is, let's say, $1,000. You'll indicate as such here. For invoices and proof of payment, we ask that you provide those for incurred business expenses. They will not be required for pivot projects and future expenses since obviously they are not expenses that have already incurred. For all of those Shopify fees, you can see that I have a consolidated Shopify invoice here. And we ask that if you have invoices and proof of payment for each month from March through December for, say, Shopify premium fees, we ask that you consolidate all of those into one PDF document, and we have a tutorial in the Help Center showing you how to do that. It is a nice and easy process, and it allows all of our documentation consolidation to flow much more smoothly. And then let's say patio construction. $3,000. So this page is simply a summary of all of the funding you have previously received and what you have used it for, and all of the funding you are requesting and what you plan to use it for. Grant amounts are being awarded between $1,500 and $10,000. So if your need is indicated to be less than $1,500, please review your expenses section and indicate that you are requesting an eligible amount of funding. And this last page is the certifications page. It's simply asking you to prove that you understand that all of the information you're providing is true and that you are doing so legally in the best interest of yourself and your sole proprietorship. And so once you reach this page, page 8, and you click Save, that is the end of the application. So you will receive an email confirming that you have submitted a completed application, and it will be available to us to review, and we will be able to reach back out with next steps that I will go over in a moment. So here is an example of the email that you will receive indicating that you have successfully completed a full application. Saved your application at any point and wish to log back in to access it, or if we have reached back out to you, indicating that the next portion of the application is required. And the next portion is simply once we have engaged in a correspondence and indicated that you will be receiving a specific amount, we have to fill out a subgrant agreement, and you do that simply by accessing your application, and there will be a couple extra fields at the end of the application in the certifications that you will fill out that are simply asking for your name and your signature. But to get there, simply log back in with the email that you associated with your account and used on the form. And it will automatically take you back to the application page. And as you can see here, we have the to edit your application, please click here. And so when you click here, it will redirect you to a full copy of your form. And so the subgrant agreement that I indicated previously will be below here, and you will be able to fill in all of the information that will allow us to create that document and get you your funding as soon as possible. And please don't forget, if you have any other questions, please email either the BDCC or to Rivers at the emails indicated at the bottom of the Vermont CDBG-CV homepage. And thank you. We are looking forward to working with you.